Before we get started, I want to remind you all that every member of the MFA community has been sent a challenge. We got an email about it, and 6 months from now, at the June residency, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this yet, but I'm going to check in with each of you. So check your email and meet that challenge. Kiah Sherif.
All right, I'm here. This feels so unreal, like I feel like I'm in a dream. I first want to say I'm so glad that Antioch exists. I was just thinking the other day, like how they say Disneyland is the happiest place on earth, but for me, that place is residency at Antioch. As tiring and draining and backbreaking and like butt numbing as it can be sitting down all the time, I'm always super excited to come here and I'm never ever disappointed. So I wish I could stay enrolled here forever. That's why I'm doing the PDS term. My first thanks goes to Steve, Jenny, Howie, Bernadette, and Kristen for keeping this program running because my life has depended on it. I want to thank all my mentors, both in the workshops and during project periods. It's Gail, Lauren, Tananarive, Carrie, and Todd Mitchell. They all contributed to my development as a writer, but special thanks have to go to Todd because he was just really awesome this past project period, and I don't think I could have gotten this far in the novel. I have like 200 pages now, and I couldn't have gotten there without his input. He's not here, and I'm actually kind of glad because he's read this and he suggested some changes, and they're good changes, but I haven't made them yet. So, yeah, glad he's not here, actually. And last, but obviously not least, my family, who's all sitting up here in front of me. Just a brief intro, because I'm going to start somewhere like in the middle. I'm going to read like 2 excerpts. And it's 2 different characters, and they're not human. It's a raven and an elephant, just so you're not like thrown off. The title of the book is The Bonded. It's mostly a story about a raven who receives a gift from the highest goddess, which makes him able to absorb memories from other creatures when he touches them. And he lives those memories as if they were his own life. So the gift is called the bond, and those he bonds with are called the bonded, which is where the title comes from. Okay, so all you need to know to follow along is that Amorphia is his love interest, and Ranos is the sky god that created the ravens. So as you can tell, this is like very fantasy type thing. So that night, Desmos dreamed that he was flying with Amorphia. They soared high into the sky, higher than they had ever gone before. The land below shrunk until his eyes could barely pick out the trees from the landscape. Everything seemed remote and tiny. Suddenly, from far away, a thick black mass of clouds came rolling toward them, threatening to engulf them. A storm. Judging by how quickly it was moving, Desmos knew the wind and rain would be powerful, too powerful for their wings to master. Forces like that could break a bird's wings. Desmos had seen naive young birds fly into a storm, thinking they could conquer the winds, only to be betrayed by Ranos, thrown from the sky, crashing into the trees, or worse, to the ground. Those who died on impact were lucky. The ones who survived, only lived to die slowly. Or they got picked up by predators, large birds or wolves or foxes, who didn't mind plucking out a few feathers for an easy snack. He was already beginning to feel the wind from here. It was picking up, becoming stronger and unfriendly as the storm raged its way toward them. Desmos shouted for Amorphia to dive, to get close enough to the earth that they would still ride the winds. If they got caught in this, they would lose all control. When Desmos turned to look at her, he realized that Amorphia was gone. Amorphia, he said, Amorphia. He twisted around frantically, looking everywhere for her face, but could find nothing. It seemed as if he were the only living creature left. Where had she gone? Where had everyone gone? Oh no, please no, Amorphia, The storm was upon him. His beak snapped shut as he was tossed by the wind like no more than a dried leaf. He had no control over his limbs. He was thrown this way and that, flung with such force that he had to keep his eyes closed to keep his head from spinning. Then, just as suddenly as the storm came, it was gone. Desmos found himself falling through calm air. He unfurled his wings and righted himself, then tried uselessly to fly backwards as a huge bird, the size of a mountain, taking up almost half the sky, appeared before him. It was pure black, so black in fact that when Desmos looked closely at its wings, he could see pinpricks of light, sparkling as if at a great distance. Stars. The bird floated in the air, wings outstretched, barely flapping to maintain its height. Desmos felt a tingling warmth spread through his body. He found himself flapping slowly and hovering in one place, something he'd never be able to do in real life. Desmos, the bird spoke to him with a deep voice that flowed like honey and seemed to make the air quiver. "Who are you?" Desmos said. "How do you know my name?" "Do you not know who I am?" Desmos stared at the bird, its wings, its large beak that was beyond any beauty he had ever seen. It was a female. He reluctantly admitted to himself that she was even more beautiful than Amorphia. Her eyes were gray, and he could not look into them for long, for they seemed to hold a deep knowledge and awareness that would overwhelm him if he tried to hold her gaze. "Are you can't be, the goddess Orama?" "Indeed, child, I have come with a message." "I will listen, great god." Overwhelmed by Orama's presence, Desmos bowed his head. He could hardly believe it was real. It couldn't be real. "I come to you bearing a gift," Orama said. "Do not be afraid." Desmos nodded, but he was still afraid. He thought Orama was only a story just moments ago. A streak of lightning lanced through the air, coming from the god's open mouth. It made contact with Desmos before he could fly out of its way. The lightning swarmed all around him, buzzing and humming, filling him not with pain, but with a tingling warmth. The electricity ruffled his feathers and entered his skin, settling on his bones. Slowly, the heat started to intensify so that Desmos became uncomfortable. Then, he was in pain, a pain unlike anything he had ever felt. The burning lightning seared his bones until he felt like he was melting. He was going to turn into a puddle. The sensation was cut off abruptly. Desmos's body was still throbbing, but as the seconds passed, it lessened in intensity. Somehow, he was still floating peacefully in the air, just as before. Orama must have kept him afloat. "You now have the gift of bonding. Whenever you touch another creature, you will know them as they know themselves." Desmos shook, not from the pain, but with fear. He immediately thought of Amorphia. He wished she were here. She would know what to do, what to say. "Yes, goddess." Desmos did not dare say anything else. "I have a task for you, child," Orama said. "You must leave your home behind and cross the ever-crashing waters. On the other side, you will come to a vast land. In that land lies the one who takes the memories. You must find her." "How can I do what you ask?" Desmos said. "I can't leave while the others are in such danger." "You must," Orama said, voice going deeper than thunder, the honeyed tones vanishing. "There is no choice. Soon, things will happen in the home territory that will force you away. Your time to depart will come whether you will it or not. Heed my words. You must accomplish your task. Failing will mean your death." "But I don't know what to do. Who is this bird? The one who takes the memories. How will I know when I found them?" "Not a bird, a 2-feet walker." Desmos gasped. "There are so many of them. I cannot even speak to them. How am I supposed to find just one?" "You will find a way. Listen to your elders. They will guide you truly." "Please, tell me how." "Our time together is finished," Orama said. "Return to your sleep. When you wake, you must go." "No, I can't," Desmos said. "I can't do it." Before he could get the protest from his beak, the wind picked up again, and black clouds seemed to grow from the wings of the goddess, spreading and spreading until she was engulfed, invisible to Desmos. "Wait, come back. I can't do this. You picked the wrong bird." The cloud rolled toward him, growing larger and spreading outward. It swallowed him up, hiding his body from his own eyes. The wind caught his wings and tossed him. He somersaulted over and over in the air. Then he was falling fast and far, unable to open his wings, darkness all around. A strange sleepiness came over him. "If I go to sleep, I'll die." The thought didn't bother him. His mind was beginning to slip away, and the storm seemed so far, as if he were nestled in the thickest of tree canopies. He couldn't feel the wind anymore, only hear it. Desmos's body became comfortably warm. Another thought came to him. "I can't die," Desmos chuckled, relaxing into the darkness and the sudden warmth. "This is a dream. None of it's real." When those thoughts to comfort him, Desmos let the exhaustion take over his mind. He closed his eyes firmly on the dreaming world. Okay, now I'm going to jump into the elephants part. A whole different person. The strength of many generations dwelt in the long, flexible trunks of Asana's family. As they reached down to welcome her into life, caressing her gently and rumbling in greeting, their strength passed on to her. She wobbled on her fresh-made legs, feeling the vitality and joy of taking her first steps. Then her legs crumpled beneath her and she fell back onto the lush grasses surrounding them. She tried again, many appendages curling underneath her belly, lifting her, nudging her forward, urging her toward life. Asana tried and tried again. Within a few minutes, with the help of her herd, she was able to stand and finally walk to her mother's side. She reached up with her mouth, searching hungrily along her mother's underbelly. It took several minutes, but she finally found the nipple and drank, slurping loudly to her stomach's content. Sated, she looked around. The sight that met her eyes was one that she did not understand. The land around her was flat, a wide, wild carpet of grass stretching endlessly onward. Trees dotted the skyline into which a giant, perfectly round ball of fire sank, sending its orange and red colors to bleed into the gray dome of sky overhead. Scattered across the grasses were hundreds of creatures she did not know the names of. The sight warmed her heart, giving her a sense of pleasure deep inside her chest, though she didn't know why. Asana drew her attention to the space immediately around her. 8 giant elephants towered over her, round feet and legs like the great limbs of trees, holding enormous strength. Their majestic trunks hung leisurely to the ground or slung across their beautiful white tusks, which glinted rusty red in the sunlight. The elephants' rumbles and low trumpets were familiar. She didn't understand any of the sounds they made, but she knew, without communication, that these creatures were her family, her herd. Shortly after Asana had suckled, her mother made a low call to the others, and they lumbered off across the great plain. Her mother's trunk reached down and nudged her forward, coaxing her to follow the herd. Asana trotted after them on wobbly legs that grew stronger with every step. Whenever she got distracted by a new sight, sound, or smell, her mother or one of the other elephants would come after her and push her along. With each push, Asana felt their love. The third thing she learned, after walking and suckling, was that the herd would look out for her, always. Asana woke slowly from the dream, merging for a moment with reality. In her head, she saw the beautiful sunset and the swaying grass, but her ears heard a splash of water. "Wake up, Asana." She opened her eyes, remembering suddenly that she had fallen asleep near the herd's latest watering hole. Hundreds of different herds had gathered here for the dry season. They milled about, bathing in the soothing moisture and idly crunching on leaves. Her cousins, Salama and Hodari, were standing over her. Salama, whose right ear had a jagged tear through the bottom, stood a little further back, looking somewhat guilty but mostly excited. Hodari, with his short tusks, one of which was longer than the other, hung his trunk over Asana's face. Asana knew what he was going to do before he did it, but she couldn't move away quickly enough. She closed her eyes as a great spray of water shot into her face. Salama fell into her rump and trumpeted in overwhelming amusement while Hodari ran away as fast as he could, back into the watering hole. Asana got quickly to her feet. All sleepiness left her. She chased Hodari at full speed and jumped into the water after him, determined to splash him back. The pond engulfed her, covering her wrinkly skin in a cool and soothing blanket. Asana drew water into her trunk, holding her breath and swimming after Hodari. He tried to evade her by sinking under the surface and holding his trunk above the liquid for air. Asana swam closer, using the floating vegetation for cover. She snuck up on him. Then, when she was close, she jumped onto his trunk, pushing it under, forcing him to come up for air. Hodari swam to the surface and erupted in a huge gasp. It was then that Asana released a great spray of water all over his face. Before he could retaliate, she turned and swam back toward the bank. She could hear Hodari splashing behind her as he tried to catch up. "I'm going to charge you to the ground as soon as we get to land," he rumbled. Hodari was already charging at her and Salama, tackling them to the ground when they weren't suspecting him. "You'll have to catch me first," Asana trumpeted. She reached the edge of the watering hole and clambered out. Salama sat at the edge, still laughing heartily. "What's so funny?" Asana said. Just as Salama opened her mouth to answer, Asana sprayed water directly into her face. "Hey, no fair," Salama said. "What was that for? Hodari started it all." "You were in on it," Hodari said, coming up behind Asana. "And you laughed," Asana accused her. Salama lowered her head and lifted her trunk in a mock charge. Asana lowered her head in return, pawing the dusty ground. Suddenly, there was a solid weight crashing into her side. Hodari had ran headlong into her, tumbling her to the ground. That'll show you for splashing me. Oh yeah, Asana said. What about this? She got up and put her front legs onto his back, her weight pushing him down on his side. Salama took the opportunity to clamber on top of him. She lost her footing and slid back to the ground. Asana took a try and managed to stay atop Hadari's side for a few seconds before she too slid off. They erupted into laughter as they fell into a tangled pile of limbs and trunks. None of them were able to stand on the other for very long. It was fun to try anyway. Hey, Asana said after overcoming a fit of giggles, let's go on an adventure. An adventure to where? Hadari said. We're not supposed to go wandering too far from the water hole, Salama said. We won't go far, Asana said, just to the little forest. The little forest, Salama said, we get in huge trouble. Nonsense, it's only a quarter of a day's travel away. We can make it in no time. We'd be back before the nighttime migration. Yeah, we could make it, Hadari agreed. It's too dangerous, you guys. There are lions out there. With this big gathering of elephants, Hadari said, there won't be any lions for miles. It's useless for them to hunt here. Asano rumbled in agreement. We'll be perfectly safe. No one will ever know where we've gone. Salama still looked skeptical. What about Masika? Asana turned to look at their herd, most of which was in the watering hole, and saw, to her dismay, that Masika, who was munching happily on the vegetation, was also keeping a close eye on them. Her heart sank. How could they ever leave without Masika knowing? We need a distraction, Asana said. What kind of distraction? I don't know anything. I know, Salama said, lifting her trunk in excitement. We don't need a distraction at all. We'll just disappear. Asana and Hadari stared at her. That's the densest thing I've ever heard, Hadari said. Salama butted his head. It's perfect. There are so many elephants in the water hole from different herds. If we act like we're playing and then swim underwater toward the other herds, Asana finished her thought. We can come to the surface far away and then we'd be lost among all those legs. She thought it was a brilliant idea. The three youngsters whispered together, plotting exactly how they would vanish. Thank you.